Hey everyone, and welcome back to Fine Print. On today's episode, we will be exploring the country of India and what would have happened if it became a monarchy after gaining independence from the British. Maybe they liked the concept of the king and the queen so much that they decided to continue it themselves, or maybe they were forced. Stay tuned to find out. The Indian independence movement had been going on since 1757, when the British permanently established their colonial rule after the Battle of Plassey. Between 1757 and 1858, the British East India Company indirectly ruled over India, controlling their markets and asserting dominance in the region. In 1858, the Government of India Act of 1858 was passed by the British Parliament, officially making India a British colony. Since then, the British had permanently established their rule on the Indian subcontinent, ruling through their divide and rule strategy. This strategy allowed them to capitalize on the Indian government, economy, and social life by creating divides between Hindus and Muslims, pitting once brothers against each other. From then on, the British exerted direct rule over the Indian subcontinent, controlling Indian people's way of life and attempting to exert English customs and traditions while erasing the historical Indian way of life. This effort was largely one sided, as the British, with superior arms, weaponry, and government systems, often toppled the weaker Indian governments, exerting even more control on the Indian people. Although independence battles had occurred before 1858, like the Sepoy Mutiny or the attempts of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj or Tipu Sultan to bring down the British crown, they became even more common later into the British Raj. In 1855, the Indian National Congress was founded in Bombay, now Mumbai, as a platform for educated Indians to discuss their opinions and how to counter British rule. Through the Indian National Congress, nationalist figures like Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel emerged and became notable politicians for the Indian independence movement. The Congress over time evolved into an organization that extensively promoted Indian independence. The non cooperation movement under Mahatma Gandhi in 1920 was one of the first upfront demands for independence. The movement's strategy was non cooperation with the British Raj, which included boycotts of British goods, schools, and jobs. Indians were encouraged by Mahatma Gandhi to promote Swaraj or self rule by homespinning their clothes. Gandhi adopted the charkha or the spinning wheel as a symbol of the movement to promote homespinning cloth. The charkha even featured in the early Indian flag, which has now evolved to be a blue wheel with 24 spokes in the center of the Indian flag, or the Ashoka Chakra. In 1930, the INC launched the Salt or Dandi March under Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi walked along the Sabarmati River, gathering followers on his march along the way to protest the salt tax. He marched over 240 miles from the Sabarmati ashram to Dandi, where he symbolically picked up a fistful of salt, having illegally produced salt from salt water. This symbolic march further pressured the British government. In 1942, the Quit India movement, led by Mahatma Gandhi, was a mass civil disobedience movement where millions of Indians gathered on the streets and adopted the slogan Quit India. The movement was sparked by the British adding India into World War II without Indian consent, fueling resentment and dissatisfaction. In 1946, the Royal India Navy Mutiny followed. The Indian Navy complained of inadequate food, working conditions, and racial discrimination, and soon banded together, starting from Bombay, to protest the injustices. By this time, the Muslim League had also founded, which raised demands for the partition of India into two countries, India for Hindus and Pakistan for Muslims. Both the INC and the Muslim League, as a result of the Navy mutiny, increased demands for independence. This mutiny is often seen as one of the final calls for independence that the British eventually gave into. They soon realized that growing discontent within their Indian colony was becoming increasingly hard to manage, and Lord Louis Mountbatten, the Viceroy of India, believed that partition and independence were the only way forward to prevent further violence. Communal riots, particularly in Bengal and Punjab, were increasing day by day, which served as the call for independence. The Muslim League under Muhammad Ali Jinnah was ready to accept the partition because they were being granted their independent country of Pakistan. The Indian National Congress, however, was more reluctant, hoping for a united India despite religious differences. According to Gandhi, the Indians, whether they be Hindu, Muslim, Jain, Sikh, Christian, Jewish, or atheist, had all lived in unity before British colonization. Thus, he believed that it was entirely possible to restore the same peace. Much to his dismay, the British technique of divide and rule had worked so well that in the span of the 190 years of the British Raj, they had created deep religious divisions to the point where returning to religious unity was nearly impossible. Reluctantly, the Indian National Congress also agreed to the partition, initiating the Mountbatten Plan. The plan was to partition British India into two dominions, India and Pakistan, with the Radcliffe Line being the border between India and Pakistan. India's princely states were given the choice to join either country. On August 15, 1947, India gained its independence and was officially split into two countries, India and Pakistan, forever changing the dynamics of South Asian geopolitics. After partition, India became a constitutional republic. On January 26, 1950, the Constitution of India came into effect, officially making India a republic. Until present day, India is led by the Prime Minister, resembling Britain's governmental structure, with the President as the head of state replacing the monarch. India's first Prime Minister and President were Jawaharlal Nehru and Dr. Rajendra Prasad, respectively. But what would have happened if India adopted a constitutional monarchy style of government as opposed to a republic? Would the country that is known for being the largest democracy in the world still have upheld that honor? Although it is very unlikely that they would have retained a monarchy, especially because they had their fight for independence against a monarchy itself. It could also be that some Indians that sympathized with the British felt that a monarchy was effective. The most likely possibility is that the Indian National Congress members would have elected a monarch to rule the new country. Most likely, an emperor, either from the Mughal family or the princely states, like Hyderabad, Gwalior, or Mysore. Because these kingdoms had been under the rule of an emperor for centuries, they would have been very likely to accept the proposal. Furthermore, their experience in ruling a diverse group of civilians would have been useful to rule over the diverse group of Indians. India would have still maintained the system of having a ceremonial monarch along with the prime minister who would have run the government, but the monarchy would have still been the symbol of power. Furthermore, because India was made up of hundreds of princely states like Kashmir and Hyderabad, before independence, having a monarchy in place would have led to either a more unified India through alliances amongst regional princes, or regional fragmentation could have been a result of maintained regional cultures that might have come to oppose each other. Because a monarchy would have been more likely to remain adamant about maintaining traditional norms and following through with historical customs, India would have been slower to adopt social reforms such as caste-based reforms, land reforms, and women's rights reforms. And although today's episode is a fun take on what would have happened if historical events would have taken an alternate turn, these episodes are to be taken with a grain of salt. We can never predict how history would have unfolded and can only make educated predictions. Keep following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you're listening from, and follow us on Instagram at fineprint.pod, and keep reading between the lines.